Hey, today we have a very unusual guest, somebody who's both a listener and somebody who's in the course, as well as somebody who has a lot of sales experience. And what I like about this is the person has humbled himself to explore other ways of selling by taking the course to become better. And you become better by thinking differently, by really analyzing what you're doing, breaking it down into tiny little pieces, looking at it, analyzing it, and then putting it back together when you sell. I think you're going to enjoy this interview because he's a career salesperson and has a different perspective, a different motive than a lot of the people that we've had on. Not just the competition and the passion and the chip on the shoulder that we've heard in the past, but the desire to be part of something, to be part of a team, to build a team, to lead a team. And I think that's really good. You don't see it enough in sales. I guess most sales leaders do get into leadership to build something because that's the fun part. And there's a conflict there because you tend to make less money unless somebody told you differently. Well, let's get into the interview. We're going to be talking about the complex sale. We're going to be talking about differentiation, how to connect with clients, the progressions you go through within your career, different ways of looking at sales. And I think you're going to get a lot out of this. And also, take a look at your pipeline. Time's running out. How many of those deals are you really going to close? Are you going to close them at that dollar level? Are you going to close them within that time frame? Winning the Complex Sales, the Game Changer program that I've got. And it's not just an online course. It's a community. You get office hours, 1 hour a week, 1 hour every other week, and one-on-ones, 30-minute Zoom calls with me. Everything's recorded and put in the course. So it's kind of like a resources for salespeople. The largest library of deal analysis, of breaking the complex sale down into tiny little pieces and becoming better at it, avoiding those traps that we all get lured into. You know what a trap is. A trap says, oh, look how delightful it is. Look how enticing. What could be the risk? And by the time you're in it, it's too late. How do I get out of it? What are those traps? Send me a proposal. Call me next week. Oh, we're definitely going to do this. Oh, we're going to do the enterprise version of this. Oh, no, there's no competition. Oh, this will just slide right through. Boom. And then it does. And it's music to our ears. But then reality sinks in. Avoid those traps and get those deals done. Let's get into the interview, and I'll sum it up at the end. Hey, Chris, welcome to the show. As way of getting started, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I am a 32-year veteran of formal sales. I was thinking back, I really have been selling since I've been 11. I had a paper route. I can't remember a time when I really wasn't employed. So if I wasn't selling newspapers or magazine subscriptions for some benefit in school or candy for hockey or baseball or something like that, I was always kind of geared towards this career in selling. I had one year that I made the fatal mistake and stepped out of sales. My father was an executive in banking, and he told me how banking really needed salespeople. And I got into banking, and I realized that they weren't really ready for salespeople at the time that I entered. So I quickly exited.
Yeah, fish out of water.
And bank account out of money.
Yeah.
As well.
What did you like about sales?
I think like a lot of people, sales is kind of a career that found me.
Yeah.
I have that personality. I'm not by any means a wallflower. I think I'm a lot funnier than I probably am. I enjoy people in general, and I'm genuinely the kind of person that likes to help and solve problems.
Yeah.
And sales, that's not even a new revelation to me. I know you talk a lot about it in your podcasts about, start with the problem. That's always kind of been my initial orientation in sales to begin with, is start with the customer's problem.
It's a lot easier that way, isn't it?
It is.
Instead of trying to drag them to your problem.
Well, yeah, the challenge has always been trying to, and we can talk a little bit about where I picked this knowledge up, but the challenge is always finding out what problem is it that they really want to solve, and are they the one that the corporation is going to listen to, because their problem may not be the one that the corporation wants to solve.
Right.
Maybe
Yeah.
some other shareholder that has a bigger problem with more influence that is going to drive the agenda. So,
And you had a pretty long stint at ADP, huh?
yeah, I had 19 years, and that was really where I grew up in sales. That was, I started as the proverbial copier salesman. So I did a year and a half at Xerox, which at the time was probably some of the most foundational sales training I ever received. I'm a little bit of a nerd when it comes to sales trainings, where everyone would be grown having to go in and listen to a new speaker or a new sales process. I always kind of enjoyed the mental challenge of, listening and seeing how it fit in terms of our current sale. But that, and then I told you about my misfortune of a year at banking. Then I went to ADP and started out as a sales rep carrying a bag.
Yeah.
And, did that for a couple of years, and then did a player coach role where I actually sold and managed two people. That was interesting. Then moved to New Jersey and managed for a couple of years, and then stepped into a corporate channel role. And then next through that process was a VP of sales, managing directors, managing managers, managing a large part of our channel business.
And what did you like best there? What role?
Well, ADP is a fantastic company. Again, I think I've been fortunate in almost everywhere that I've gone, that I've had companies that have been willing to invest in sales training and their salespeople. And Xerox, certainly put, tens of thousands of dollars in my training, and ADP probably put twice as much invested in me over 19 years, certainly. So there was a culture at ADP that I really liked. It wasn't a culture for everybody. I don't know if you've had other ADPers on your podcasts or not, but the one thing that I really liked, and it was nerve-wracking. We had this tradition called roll call, and it was Tuesday nights, and it was rumored that was the only night that the three founding fathers of the business could get together, and they would discuss what business they really had for the week.
Yeah.
And so Tuesday night was a routine for the sales office, and you went in, and it was you stood and you would say, on a quota of X, I have Y. If you didn't have anything, you would wear your ribbon of shame, and you would say, on a quota of X, I would have to pass. The claps came out. Even if you had a nickel, you got a clap. If you blew out the week, you got standing ovation. But nothing was worse than the silence.
A goose egg.
Oh, it was horrible. Yeah. I mean, you would do anything almost to distraction. On the last day of Monday, you would just try to go out and find $100 worth of business, just not to
say zero. Yeah.
But I loved it.
Yeah.
I mean, there were people, they'd get knots in their stomach, but I love that culture.
And, what about it though? Was it that team, the camaraderie, the training, the development?
I think it was everything, because, I mean, it was culture primarily. You were with like-minded people. I mean, It was a fun culture. Yeah. We celebrated. We worked hard and we celebrated hard. Recognition was plentiful. Scorn was there when it was deserved and needed. So it was just the right balance of everything. And it was interesting, because when I ended up changing careers after 19 years there, I got asked by recruiters and employers, are like, well, how come you had this one job for 19 years? I said, well, yeah, I had 9 different jobs while I had, while I was there.
That's it. Yeah. Because people don't think that.
No. And it almost seemed like it was a detriment to be loyal to my company.
It is, because, I've been a hiring manager, and when you see a long stint, you don't want an account manager. You want a hunter. Right. You want somebody, and the long, either too short or too long, kind of looks a little weird.
Yeah. No, but it's funny. You said something that made me think. So as I had mentioned, I'm zeroing in on kind of my next gig.
Yeah.
But I've been doing the, networking and getting in front of opportunities. And, the descriptions always call for the hunter and the new logo guy. And then at the end of the description, they always want this guy with the big fat Rolodex.
Yeah.
And, and a lot of times I was applying out of industry, but I was, I always felt that the performance art of sales was much more important to master that than whatever it was that you were selling.
I don't know how many Rolodex deals you've seen.
Yeah.
But I think I've seen one in my whole career.
Well, it's interesting because I ran into it so often in conversations. I started to do research and I put together kind of like a cover letter, and I had a couple links to articles as to why you don't want the Rolodex hire.
Yeah.
And why the Rolodex hire has already done his prospecting. And once he or she kind of clears through the people he knows or she knows, the trick's done. They're not used to having to hunt anymore. And I enjoyed the hunt.
Yeah. And the hunt has changed because the Rolodex is no longer the Rolodex. It's LinkedIn, right?
It is. Yeah. Absolutely. And it's not a guarantee. I mean, there was one job that I applied for. It came through a LinkedIn job feed. It was for a fairly well-known company. I had no connections into it. I networked my way to the founder of the company.
Yep.
Actually had a good conversation with the founder, got a handoff to the hiring manager. And despite even leveraging all that, I still didn't get a sniff at the opportunity, and so you never really know, but you gotta hunt. You can't spray and pray.
Right.
I mean,
yeah.
That I've learned.
Yeah. Too many people, they fill in the application online and it's like, it goes, who knows where it goes.
Well, what would you do? I mean, if you had 1,000 emails waiting, you'd read the first 30, 40. Yeah. And if you got what you needed, why bother going deep in the pile?
Yeah. But if you have a hunter contact you and the person's got a good background and clearly can communicate, every sales leader I know wants to hire killers.
Right.
And nobody's saying, Brian, I've got too many A players. Take some off my hands.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
They go, can you take some of these C players away?
Right.
Yeah. What do you want to do now?
Well, like I said, I've really, so I started your class, closing the complex sale when I was in this enterprise role. And I didn't have my hand on the joystick. I wasn't flying the plane. Yeah. I had 12 divisions and I had, 12 salespeople and their own management structure. And they were essentially driving their individual deals, but I was coordinating the larger relationship at, some of the top health systems in the country. Yeah. And so it was my job to try to see the forest from the trees and guide without,
mandating,
without hierarchical authority, right? They didn't report to me.
Yeah.
So I had to build some trust and camaraderie, and we had to do that. So I was kind of coming out of that role, and what I realized that I really liked about that role is I liked the coaching opportunities. I liked the individual networking. We would every year, I only had 5 or 6 relationships that I had to manage. And so each year we'd start by bringing the team together and developing a mission plan. And that mission plan was as much about building the team and the camaraderie to know that the guy from Division 1 should know the guy from Division 3, and they should have conversations. And then once I start augmenting conversations, the networking just takes off in the room. And it was really fulfilling to bring that through. But I wasn't doing rocket science. It was a relatively simple trick. But it was when I realized that the mission plans from 2017 started sounding a lot like the ones from 18 and 19. And we were hearing the same names and, the same failed strategies, that I said to myself, I really wanted to step outside where I was working and get an outsider's view. And that's where you came in. And so you really kind of became my sales spirit animal in this journey. And so that was I mean, that was a big part of it. And so I decided culture and fit became really important
It
in
is.
my search.
Yeah. Because,
So
right. Because especially if you're in leadership, and
yes,
I had a great guy on, and yeah, I'm trying to think, RSA, I think he's in Canada right now, where he really has the right model, because you can kind of get stuck between a rock, the field, and home office, the hard place.
right.
And the field hates you, and home office is tell those bums
Yeah.
to sell something, right?
Well, yeah, in particular in that role, that, what I would call an enterprise role, where you're managing teams who control their direct sale, there is always this constant question of value. Are
Yeah.
you providing value to them? You're wondering if they're doing right by you, because plans that you've mutually agreed upon executing don't get executed. So if they're not eating the dog food, you're either you got the wrong dog food, or
You got the
you
wrong
know
dog.
or the wrong dog. Yeah, exactly. So you're good at this. You're good at
Yeah,
this.
I've been around the block a few times.
Literally.
Literally. Yeah. Well, the inspiration for all those little talks are through sitting through endless meetings with somebody who wasn't helping. And
Right.
and I did have great sales leaders early in my career. So, and that the bad part of that is you start to know what a bad sales leader is,
Right.
you know.
Right.
And if you get, I had like the accountant, the guy who
Right.
never really sold, but was great with spreadsheets and
Yeah.
reports and trying to find correlation and causation. And you're like, okay,
Yes. Yeah. I'm not in the right place.
yeah. And had the uncontrollable need to say the worst possible thing in front of the client.
So did you master the kick,
I'm,
the table kick?
I kicked him under the table, and he looked at me and goes, "Why are you kicking me?" That's how off he was.
That's funny. It's and when you get in those situations, Brian, go back to culture and fit. I have a saying that I've used a lot. I said every good revolution needs a martyr to die in the struggle.
Yeah,
And sometimes the answer is you have to find a different place to practice your trade craft.
yeah.
And that's kind of where I am at this point.
Now, I'm sure you've seen a lot of great salespeople, mediocre, and not so great salespeople. Have you come up with kind of distinctions?
Um, to answer your question, yes, I've seen all three. I think I've been two or three of those at different times. If I'm being, completely candid about even my own efforts, um, I think the major distinction, between the A player and just the average player is someone who kind of sees, the chessboard for two or three moves ahead.
Yeah,
The things that I have learned in your class that really have stuck with me, and one that I've said it so much, I think people think it's my own original thought. If it's not overtly positive, it's covertly negative.
yeah,
It's one of the most brilliant things about understanding where you are in any sales process.
yes,
And the mobility, keeping a sales process moving. And what does that mean? So I joked about, strat plans sounding the same year over year over year. That's because, leadership, individuals, the combination of everything wasn't keeping the deal moving. We would do dumb things faster.
yes. Right. And every person I talk to about the course says the same thing. Well, my deals are just dying to no decision or delaying.
Right.
But I think delaying is an optimistic view of it.
Well, you may get a chance if I know you're not a terribly busy man, but as part of this employment process, I started a sales blog. I haven't been as faithful to it as I should, but one of them is sales are like goldfish, and if you can remember you won the goldfish or you got the goldfish in some school contest and you brought it home and when your goldfish stopped moving, you knew you had a problem, right?
Yeah,
It was pretty obvious.
right.
There's a There's a lot of dead goldfish in CRM systems all over North America.
Oh, and almost mandated to be, right? I
Yeah,
don't know when the 300% of your pipeline thing became the norm,
right,
but
right.
you're just asking for bloated dead goldfish to fill up the CRM.
Well, you do because you back to your guy that liked spreadsheets and wanted it to be, quantitative and you can analyze it. You know, you know, as you've said, this is a performance art. And if you watch, a tennis player, if you watch a ballerina, if you watch a comedian, what's the algorithm?
Yeah,
You know, can you look at it, watch it, and then decide exactly, it's the old saw about, how do you get to Carnegie Hall?
right.
Practice,
Practice.
practice, practice.
Yeah.
Right.
And few people get that, because
Yeah.
the most common question I get is, can you recommend any books?
Right.
And it's like, yeah, you can read the book, but if you read a joke book, you can't become a comedian, right?
Right. No, exactly. Exactly.
You'll know some funny jokes. You won't be able to tell them in a funny way.
Right. You won't be, yeah.
Right. And if you look
That's a
at,
great example.
yeah, because all the great comedians, I study comedy. I love
Well,
it.
it's clear. I mean, you are a funny guy. So
And what do they all do? They get an hour, and then they go around for 1 year to clubs
right.
and work on that
Yeah.
1 hour a year.
Yeah. That's right. There's you've probably seen the documentary of Jerry Seinfeld
Yeah,
doing that.
you're right.
And that's exactly what he did, and he's like, oh, you never start out with the new joke. You never start out with
Right.
the new routine, right?
You build.
Yes. Take the stuff they know and then tinker around the edges.
And especially in the large complex sale,
Correct.
people think one step ahead, like your point
Yeah.
about, and the next step. How many times have you heard that?
Yeah. Well, you know what? And that was the thing that was really revolutionary for me in thinking. I did, the map to money, right? In my head, I had the map to money, but no one draws a treasure map in their head. And that's the part where I really started to, I felt like I was giving my salespeople better counsel. And it was more constructive to look at the map and say, okay, we've tried this route. We keep getting banged over the head with a shovel.
Yep.
What are some other tacks we might want to take on this account?
Well, that's it. That's how I came up with it. I had the backing as a software developer, and what software developers do is they get on the whiteboard and they draw the whole system out before they start typing code
Right.
in. An architect doesn't just start pouring a
Right.
foundation and call the carpenters.
Right.
Right? They draw the
Mostly.
whole thing out.
Right.
And you got to put the plumbing in. If you put the walls up before you put the pipes in, it's a
Right.
problem.
It is going to be a problem. I'm not in construction, but that's a problem.
Yeah. But what do we do in sales? We're like, oh, they like us. They love us. My
Yeah.
guy is going to get it done for us.
Right. And I was there. I've committed all the original sales sins.
And
I'm a deal away from President's Club. It's 3 days away. If you just say yes, and it's
right.
just, it's begging.
So, yeah. And what I did is like every deal before and after, just review it and update my map and think through it, especially when you travel,
Yeah.
because I travel most of my career, and which usually meant getting up at 4 a.m. to
Right.
get the first flight out so I could make a 10 o'clock meeting anywhere in the country pretty much, except for the West Coast or East Coast. And if I was committing that amount of my time, I wanted to win that deal.
Right.
And, especially like some of the engineers that would come with me. Oh yeah, the guy in Boston's a lot better than you. The day I heard that, there was a bet on the table by the end of the day.
Right.
But I'd spend the rest of the year trying to prove him wrong.
Right.
But you make those investments of time and energy, and to lose seems just so stupid to me.
Right. But everybody, it's interesting because everybody has a different
Motive.
fuel that
Yeah.
drives their motor, right? I
Yeah.
mean, I've got a young son who just started an inside sales career. He's in the room next door to me, and um, it's I think he's not a money motivated guy, and
No,
this is a more of a money motivated position. So
it is.
so I've been coaching him, and he'll find out whether this is the right thing for him or not. But not everyone is motivated, whether it's by dollar or challenge or
It's, but it's got to be kind of internal because the external
it's
wears off.
right. Internal, 100% agree. You've got to have something that's driving you, that you're compelled to move towards it,
Yes.
whether that's an innate desire to help,
Right.
which I think is an
Or
incredible,
build. Yeah.
yeah, build. Or you asked about ADP. Another thing was they gave it was an entrepreneurial environment that I was given. I mean, it was structured enough, but they gave me just enough, to build a stepping stone or a stumbling block.
Yeah.
And
But because if you don't see that motive,
right,
you have an employee
right,
as opposed to a salespreneur.
right.
And
Well,
an employee will do what they're told, but at 5 o'clock, they're not going to lose sleep over that
right.
deal.
Well, it's interesting. So I this may be very random, but hopefully your listeners will find it entertaining. But it was early on in my ADP sales career, and I was just a regular rep going door to door, and I had stopped at very Pat Mitchell's Ice Cream. They're no longer in business. They're in Binghamton, New York. Very well known place at the time, and the owner sat across the table. I cold called. And I was going to ask for an appointment. He said, "Why don't you just come in and sit down?" And he wanted to tell me all the reasons why he didn't need me. And he had his arms folded across his chest. And I politely listened. And I asked this open question about, well, have you ever had a tax penalty? And knowing that it was already after the 15th of the month, I saw his payroll tax coupon on the bulletin board behind him with a check.
Yeah.
And he was 3 days late for filing his tax penalty or his taxes. And you talk about where awareness and need intersect. And all I had to do was have him turn around, and he said, "Yeah, maybe I'm not so good at this payroll stuff." And he bought on the spot.
Yeah.
So it was in that story I learned, it's about the conversation. It's the mammal to mammal
Yes.
interaction. And
Right.
it's about knowing when you have shown them how you've solved their problem.
Yeah. Because he had that pain right behind him.
Oh, it was only 30 days away, the pain.
Right. And
And
it's
I
probably a lot more expensive than your product.
it would have covered a year and a half's worth of service probably. So,
What drove you as a rep?
I was, I think there's working for good people drove me. I was motivated by people that were motivated themselves.
Yeah.
So strong leadership, good vision. I told you that I've always had kind of a personal motive of helping. So that was always a strong motive for me. The ability to get the people connection was strong. I'm a big feedback guy, so I like affirmative feedback. Laugh at my jokes. You're probably going to have a hard time getting rid of me.
Yeah.
So, I mean, sometimes I don't know when, the curtain should close and I got to go
home.
go home. But those are the kinds of things that motivated me. I was never the person that was, one more deal clicks me into my accelerator.
Yeah.
But I was always conscious of where I was. And out of 30 years of quota carrying position, I made or exceeded quota 28 times.
Yeah.
And so I was always.
But being part of a team excited you?
Team was very motivating. Yeah. Shared pain, war stories, the camaraderie, the trenches.
Right. Feeling part of something.
That. Yeah. Whether I was leading it or I was in it.
Yeah.
And even if I was leading it, I was in it. I've always tended a little bit to the player coach model anyways.
Yeah.
I think people that work with me would vouch for that.
And I see the people who move up into leadership have that driver as opposed
Right.
to just the lone wolf, the hunter.
Right. Right. Well, and that's, so, we talk about culture and fit, and I'm circling on a couple opportunities. I actually had a recruiter who wants to push an initial interview off, and I'm telling them, my window's closing a little bit. So if you're really interested in my resume, we need to speak sooner rather than later. But what I'm moving towards are a smaller company in a place where I will have my hand on the joystick. I will get to fly the plane. I will get to make some of the rules. I will get to apply some of the logic of the things that you teach in your course, as opposed to having to salute the dogma of whatever was laid in front of me. These will be companies where I will sink or swim on my own accord, and I like that.
Right. Yeah. Because most companies I see that their process is their focus, what they'd like the process to be, not what the process really is.
I know this is you interviewing me, but my question that I've always wanted to ask you, and when you go in and you lay out the brutal truth to these managers, how many of them are really ready to make the changes that they need to make to create the environment needs to exist?
Very few. I mean, that's typically what I would run into when I did it on-prem, was the reps go, yeah, this makes sense, and this is why it gets stuck. And then management's like, well, we don't want to put that much service into it, or we want them to buy the service to evaluate the product.
Right.
Or we can't spend that amount of time. Oh, you want to spend less time losing or more time winning?
Right.
That's the choice.
Exactly. Well, I mean, that's, and that's how you teach through humor.
Yeah.
You point out the absurdity of these things, and if you don't get it through your parodies, you're probably not going to get it.
And you could see some of the comments that people just don't get it.
They want to tangle with you.
Or they just, well, they'll enter all the data on the CRM after work, and it's like,
right.
well, why don't you do that?
Right.
Guess why it's not correct then?
Right. Well, it's funny or interesting, because I just had I'm in a gentleman starting up a online networking tool through Mighty Networks, I think is the platform he's using.
Yep.
And we got into a little back and forth on CRM and adapting to COVID and what tools. And I had mentioned that, I started using CoVideo through the recommendation of your program. And I didn't use it a lot. I didn't get a chance to use it a lot. I used it 5 or 6 times with some degree of success. And I know that these are the tools, because you're going to have to find a way to be virtually interesting enough to be engaging.
Yes.
So they trust you, so they let you into your circle, so you can, you can begin to diagnose their problems.
Yeah. There's got to be trust for them to talk with you. They either want to or have to. And they probably don't have to.
They definitely don't have to. In fact, I mean, the technology barriers that are out there now have made it easier for us to avoid human contact more now than ever.
Yeah. And especially, for those of us who are used to face-to-face, that doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah. Well, let's hope that it's not gone.
No, it's not gone, but
let's hope it returns sooner rather than later.
So what advice are you giving to people your son's age about sales?
I probably talk to my son differently than I talk to some of his friends who know I've had a career in sales, and I've, actually kind of given him a boost or given him an introduction to, different jobs. But I think it starts with the internal question. You talked about what motivates you.
Yeah.
I think you really need to know what motivates you, and you almost need to have your money map for life drawn out.
Yeah.
in at least a skeleton of it. You need to know what makes your clock tick,
Yes.
um, because you can easily, people can see you and say, oh, you have this great outgoing personality, you should be in sales. And that's not true for everybody.
It's not true. It's part of it,
It is,
right?
but
But if you can't take negative feedback, then or rejection,
right. Or if some of the basic blocking and tackling elements of building those relationships, phone work or,
yeah,
foot canvassing or, you know, networking, if any of that causes you angst and paralyzes you,
right,
you're in the wrong spot. So I think it's know thyself is the
yes,
biggest piece of advice,
yeah,
and map out like what kind of a life do you envision having? Because if you envision a life that is going to take $250,000 a year to drive, that you can check off librarian, you can cross off,
right,
stock clerk, you can cross off many different jobs
right.
because they're not going to get you what it is that you want.
Yeah,
So
and I think a lot of people make that mistake, and then, because most people don't find their groove until they're 30 or late 20s,
yeah,
and I think it's,
yeah,
you know, because they go to school, college, and they study something that they're interested in, but may not have any
right.
marketability.
Well, I always I used to call it my Brussels sprouts theory. When I hated Brussels sprouts, I've matured and I now like Brussels sprouts, so I have to come up with a different name. But life is typically finding a lot of the things that you didn't like. In fact, when I stepped into banking, so what happened was I went into Xerox, which at that period of time was the it job. I was one of 500 candidates, one of two candidates that was picked over 500 people going for the job. Very lucky to get the job. Learned a ton, you know, um, had this thought that banking was where I needed to be. And then I got into banking and I was in the management training program, and I realized, that I was getting, backbenched by, someone who had worked their way up from assistant teller to head teller to platform manager. And they weren't interested in developing me.
No.
And it didn't help that I, was putting up great sales numbers. They'd always find the check mark, the red
Yeah.
ink that my paper needed. It was
Yeah.
like, well, you could have done this better. And ultimately, my pay was cut in half. And what I really realized was I liked and needed money maybe more than I originally thought. And I knew that I needed to be more in control of my own destiny.
Yes.
And sales was that's how I ended up getting back on the train. It
Cool.
was a brief stop.
Hey, Chris, I really enjoyed this conversation. Where can people go to connect and follow you?
They can, well, with a name like Chris Jones, I'm probably pretty hard to find on LinkedIn. But you can probably type in some things at Syracuse. I worked at ADP. So between those, you can find it. I told you I started a blog. It's called Tips and Tales About Sales. There's 5 entries in there.
Good
And
start.
yeah, it's like, the newsletter you started. I
Right.
always joke. I say, tell me when you've got edition number 15 coming out of your newsletter, then
Yeah.
I'll start reading it. But those are 2 ways that you can find me.
Hey, I hope you like it, and I hope you connect up with him. Let's talk about the complex sale. How's it going? It's not easy, is it? And it's not getting easier. Connecting up with people, starting conversations, getting meetings, that's the crux of it. And all we hear is, oh, personalize, make it relevant. Oh, guess what? Even the most personalized commercial, the most relevant commercial, it's like 1 to 3% of the time does it stick. But connecting up with a human being, 80% of the time, doesn't it? Don't you want to talk with people? Don't you want to learn from other people? Don't you want to be engaged with other people and enjoy a conversation? Most of us do, not all the time, but at least we're more open to it. And what type of person do we want to talk to? Usually the lowest on the list. Salesperson? Maybe, just maybe. Not us. Those other salespeople, I don't want to talk to them, but me, I'm quite charming. What we have to do is connect with other people, engage with our network, and build that up. This is a skill. It's not just a knowledge. It's not just listening to the content of the course. It's applying it, getting feedback, hear how other people are doing it, find the distinctions. Sales is a performance profession. It's not just doing dumb things faster. It's not even doing smart things faster. It's doing smart things in the right way. You're dealing with people. That's what a lot of people don't understand about selling. Everyone's different. You're never going to get 100%. But if you can get 50, 51%, you'll be a millionaire. You'll do so well. And you'll enjoy living. You'll enjoy selling. Selling becomes fun when we have success with it. And how about taking a course and learning how other people are having success with it and enjoy selling? It can be a lot of fun. Nothing better than winning a deal. Nothing better than making a little progress. Go to b2brevenue.com right now. There's a video on what describes all the course material and answers 99% of the questions. You can always schedule a time with me if you'd like. If you're serious, please be serious. Okay? And what does serious mean? Serious means you want to solve a problem. You just don't want to take a course. You want to get more meetings. You want to win more deals. And you want to become better at sales. That's solving a problem. And, everyone's got the problem. I want to sell more. I want to get more meetings. And I look at it as a performance. I get better at it every day. I'm okay at it. I'm probably better than most, but still working towards it. Are you checking out the other podcasts? Sales Questions, Brutally Honest Answers, and the B2B Revenue Leadership Show? Are you checking out the website? Are you being sweet to me and giving me a little like, a little comment, a little share on those videos I make? I work so hard for you folks, trying to bring you the best content I can on sales and separate the brutal truth from the mere babble that I hear about sales. And I got to tell you, it does inspire me because when I see other people talking about sales and you're like, oh, okay. Then you check out their profile and, you sold for a couple years at one company and then you got fired. Okay. Oh, let me take some notes. You definitely know something. Or, no. Let me attend one of those webinars with the marketing person who's going to teach me how to sell. Oh, yeah. That's a good use of my time. Yeah, I'll spend my time doing that. No, you come here for the podcast. Hey, you checked out the YouTube channel? I got all the videos stored up there. If you're a YouTube person, you like to watch. If you can't get enough, that's the place to go. I'll see you next time. Tell somebody about the show today. I'd appreciate that. We'll talk soon.